So just as a little note to Teo Holiday, I think your son is right. I think you should write some stories down. They don't have to be good. Just write stuff. It doesn't, write like a journal. Just write. And then go back and look at it and see if you want to fix it. I would, in the course of reading this book, I have wanted to rewrite every single page. And I don't think that's ever going to stop. I really don't. Anyway. So this is chapter 15. And this is the epigraph. Inevitably, every time we repeat a story, we add to the previous repetitions. Every story is a palimpsest composed of layers of telling and retelling, and every time we think we are parroting a well-known antidote, the words spread their feathers and sprout new ones for the occasion. Alberto Manguel. I think I'm saying that wrong, but I stood on the deck outside Robin's bedroom. A sliver of the bay was visible at a distance. Everything seemed to be in muted pastel. I took deep breaths of salty air and wondered how I would make my living in this beautiful city of revolution. In San Francisco, the San Francisco newspaper on the kitchen table had a headline about the zebra killings. When a white person was shot in San Francisco, the shooting was blamed on black extremist or military groups. I bought into the paranoia. I imagined being shot in the laundromat by black terrorists. I was a depressed and uncertain girl who had just been under the wheel of a truck. I spent most of my time in my room reading, writing in my journal, watching television, and eating avocado sandwiches. In the entryway, there was a large poster of a Chinese revolutionary woman holding a flag and a copy of Mao's Little Red Book. I knew that Robin was interested in radical revolutionary thought, and her roommate Tim was doing his master's in history with an emphasis on Marxism. Robin was in school majoring in dance and psychology. We talked about personal process in art and revolution. Tim and I found little ground for relationship. He talked about the CIA bringing heroin into the African American community. He suggested that our phone might be tapped. But then the Symbionese Liberation Army kidnapped Patty Hearst for crimes her parents had committed against the poor. She changed her name to Tanya, and young white women interested in social revolution like myself wondered if things were about to get crazy. Maybe we should all be changing our name and carrying big guns. One evening, Tim and Robin asked me to join them at the kitchen table for a serious conversation. There's a possibility that the SLA will be hiding here. Is that okay with you? I don't mind. They can use my room. Anything for the revolution. But I knew that I could not handle this kind of revolution. I had known that since I watched Mr. Snyder crumbling a soda can in my hippie high school. I felt like a frightened middle-class kid, and they seemed so much more passionate and committed. Looking back, I think they might have been teasing me. The SLA never even stopped by for tea. People kept asking me what I did. The only thing I had been doing was recovering from being under the wheel of a truck. Now I had a stack of books and a determination to do self-analysis. I filled journals with thoughts about my weight. I was fat to keep men from wanting to have sex with me because I was afraid of sex. I was fat because I didn't want to be too beautiful and compete with other women. I was fat because I couldn't stop eating Oreos. I ate Oreos to fill the pain. I was fat because I didn't want to compete with my mother. I wasn't self-actualized if I was fat. If I were self-actualized, the weight would just disappear. I felt captive in my own process. If I couldn't get clear psychologically, I wouldn't lose weight. And if I couldn't lose weight, I would never get clear psychologically. I titled my journal Adipose Agony. I drew a picture of a fat girl leaning against a refrigerator, clutching the handle. Every morning I sat at the kitchen table looking through the want ads. I thought I might like being a cook. Maybe if I learned about food, I would eat better. The owner of a small cafe in the neighborhood hired me. The chef thought the owner was trying to replace him. He saw me as the chosen successor, despite the fact that I clearly didn't know much about how to cook. He would give me monotonous tasks that took hours and didn't seem like they would advance my ability to cook. At one shift in which I cleaned an entire bushel of green beans, I quit. I was back at the kitchen table with the paper. I answered an ad for a job in a hotel in Northern California. The woman who owned it was in the city interviewing people for the job. She came to the apartment and sat with me in the kitchen. It was casual and friendly. She had long black hair and thick eyebrows that met in the middle when she smiled. She was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt. Her name was Maggie. She needed someone to be a maid and a waitress. She thought I might be able to help with the cooking. I would move to the mountains where I wouldn't have to worry about the SLA. A week later, I bought a bunch of new books and got on the bus to Soda Springs. Maggie met me at the bus station. She had also hired an elderly African-American man to do maintenance. We all piled into her car and went to our new home/job. I was shown to my room in the attic. There was a single bed, a closet, a sink, and a dormer window. In high altitude, there were more stars visible than I had ever seen. I stood at my window and stared at the sky, wonderstruck. The hotel had its own internal culture. I got all my meals from the kitchen. Maggie put me on a diet. It never occurred to me that dieting as a condition of employment might be inappropriate. I believed I needed to lose weight, and I believed she was just helping me. I did not resist. I worked in the morning waiting on tables. I worked all afternoon cleaning rooms. I waited tables at dinner. It was a ridiculous amount of work. The hotel cook was a very territorial older Italian woman who wasn't going to teach me anything. A woman who lived near the hotel had a big German shepherd named Mookie. The first time Mookie ran up to me barking, I was flooded with memories of the accident. Fear filled my body, and I hoped she'd go away. But she wooed me patiently. If I got the rooms cleaned early enough, I took long walks in the woods with Mookie. We followed the river until we found a spot where rocks were big enough to sit on. I wrote in my journal and read. The smell of pines and the glint of sun bouncing off the rocks, the sound of Mookie breathing, her weight pressed against my knee, induced a kind of peace. But then it was back to work. I was given very little food. I began to lose weight. There were rumors that the guys who worked in the bar were taking bets on who would fuck me first once I was thin. I lay in my single bed at night staring at the stars through the little dormer window, my vibrator on high, fantasizing about all of them. I didn't fantasize about what they would do to my body. I fantasized about what they would say to me. I see how hard you are working to make your body beautiful, but I want you to know that I find you so attractive as a person. I don't care what you weigh. Nobody actually said that. That's what I imagined. Sorry. And the steady buzz below brought the glory of those words to my body. Maggie wanted us to be one big happy family. Her boyfriend worked at the hotel. Her son lived there. Her grandmother lived in the hotel. I went to visit Grandma every day. On her birthday, she lifted a glass of champagne and said, "Here's to it, let's do it. Damn the man who can't do it without putting his hand to it." She was nothing like either of my grandmothers. Maggie was the dominant mother who had tried to escape. I was so desperate for a place to live and a community to be part of that I succumbed to the too much work and too little food. But I wasn't really part of a community. I was a lonely girl wandering along a river in the mountains looking at the stars. Telephone conversations with my own mother were tense. I couldn't defend myself against the barrage of questions she asked about my future. I was drifting. On my 21st birthday, Maggie and some friends took me to Reno, Nevada. I drank 21 tequila sunrises and won $21 in nickels. On the drive back to Northern California around the winding mountain roads, I lost the sunrises. Now I could spend my evening in the hotel bar drinking, getting drunk and melancholy. I was thinner, but apparently not thin enough. The boys in the bar weren't hitting on me. I got a job at a different hotel higher in the mountains and moved to a rustic cabin with a fireplace, a little kitchen, and a porch. I thought I might be happier away from Maggie's rule. For a month or two, I sat on the porch in the evenings looking at the serene lake, meditating on beauty and peace. But I knew I couldn't stay. San Francisco felt too big. The mountain town felt too small. I just didn't know where to go next. I decided to visit my father. Dad was in his fourth marriage. He spent hours at work, came home expecting dinner to be ready, sat in a chair with a Brandy Alexander and watched TV. His wife had a daughter who was about the age of my half-sister. When he was working, we sat on the queen-size bed watching soap operas. His wife, Loretta, was very tall and thin. She had the oval-shaped face of a Modigliani painting, jet black hair and long nails. She leaned back into the pillows propped up behind her and drew a diamond file around the rim of each nail in a languid manner. She stopped now and again to sip from a can of Pearl beer and suck on the end of a filterless Philip Morris. The girls sat on the edge of the bed, using her nail polish to paint her toes, begging for a sip of beer, talking about the characters on the soap opera, and vying to be the focus of her attention. I watched in wonder. One of the girls would take a sip of beer, and Loretta would lean forward just a bit, pressing a long finger into her lips and saying, "Shh, don't tell Daddy." And a conspiratorial giggle passed between them. But I wasn't sure why we couldn't tell Daddy. "Why don't you wear a bra?" asked Cindy, the bolder of the two girls. "I think bras are too restrictive. I think women wear bras to make their breasts look the way men want to see them. I'm just not into that patriarchal view of beauty." The girls were staring at me, foreheads scrunched with confusion. "Well, Daddy would never let me go out the door with no bra," Cindy said, looking to Loretta for confirmation. Loretta took a sip of beer and smiled. "Tisha's old enough to make her own decisions." That's right, I thought. I would never let Dad tell me what to do. And the voice of my grandmother would echo in my ear, "You're the only real daughter." Then I watched as Cindy put bright pink paint on her toenails. She looked up and smiled. Loretta and her daughter Becky were leaned together, Becky's arm draped around Loretta's shoulder. I asked for a sip of beer. I asked for a Philip Morris Commander, unfiltered.